Welcome to Reformed Thinking. Have you ever made a really strict set of rules for your life, only to, watch them just completely fall apart within a matter of days?
Oh, yeah. I mean, all the time.
Right. You know the feeling I'm talking about. It happens to, well, almost all of us every single January.
Yes, the classic New Year's resolutions, it never fails.
Spot on. You buy the really expensive gym membership.
The one you end up never using.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, I mean, totally. You take a trash bag and you just clear all the junk food out of the pantry.
Right into the garbage.
And then you download like 3 different habit tracking apps on your phone and you write down this rigid, uncompromising schedule.
Because this time it's going to be different, right?
That is what we tell ourselves. You look in the mirror and tell yourself that this time you are going to be a highly disciplined person.
A totally new you.
Yes. You are going to wake up at 5 in the morning. You're going to read a dense nonfiction book every week, and you are never going to lose your temper with your kids again.
Which is, a very tall order.
It really is. And then inevitably, by the second Tuesday of the month, the alarm goes off.
Oh, I know this part.
It is freezing cold outside, your bed is super warm, and you hit the snooze button.
And that's it. It's over.
The rules are broken. The resolve just completely evaporates into thin air.
It really is a universal human experience, isn't it?
It is. We have all been in that spot, staring at our own failure and wondering why our willpower has such, a short shelf life.
Yeah, setting a high, pristine standard for ourselves and then just watching our own flesh fail to meet it.
We crash headfirst into the undeniable reality of our own weakness.
Right, and we think the problem is just a lack of proper scheduling.
Or maybe we need a better morning routine.
But the issue goes straight down to our nature.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we want to be autonomous, self-made people who conquer our bad habits through sheer grit.
But grit always runs out.
It always does.
And that universal experience sets up the mission for our deep dive today. We are looking at a really striking source document titled Dependent by Design, Praying the Resolutions of Jonathan Edwards.
This is such a fascinating text.
It really is. But we need to put some historical context around this before we get to the core of it.
Sure, set the stage for us.
We are looking at the personal writings of a young pastor in colonial New England. This is a man in his late teens and early 20s.
Which is pretty young to be writing something this intense.
Very young. He sat down in the year 1722 and wrote out 70 rigorous, unrelenting resolutions to govern his entire life under Christ.
70 of them. That is a lot of rules.
It is huge. We are talking about 70 specific rules covering his time management, his daily speech, his diet, his thoughts, his relationships, and his reactions to suffering.
Wow.
Yeah, to a modern listener, it sounds like, well, the ultimate recipe for a psychological breakdown.
I can see why people would think that.
But Edwards completely avoided the trap of self-reliance. He grounded these 70 resolutions in his own total inability to keep them without the grace of God.
And that concept of total inability, that is the core premise of this entire document.
It really is the key to the whole thing.
As the introduction to our source points out, true obedience begins and ends in dependence.
So it is not just a checklist of human willpower.
No, not at all. If you read them as a modern self-help manual or like a life-hacking guide, you will miss the point entirely.
You just end up crushed under the immense weight of the law.
Totally. Instead, Edwards used these resolutions as constant springboards for prayer.
So they were a method of relying on the Holy Spirit.
Yes. This source text brings up a quote from the Gospel of John where Jesus states, "Apart from me, you can do nothing."
Edwards understood that truth in his bones.
He really did. He knew his own heart was prone to wander and that his own strength was entirely insufficient for the task of holiness.
So the narrative flow for our conversation today is pretty clear. We are going to look at how this constant, intense reliance on grace shaped Edwards' view of time,
Right.
how it fueled his relentless battle with sin, how it dictated his interactions with the people around him, and finally, how it framed his perspective on eternity.
It covers all of life.
It really does. Let us go straight into the first major theme, the trap of willpower versus the grace of dependence.
Okay, let's do it.
What is the very first thing he writes before listing out these 70 rules?
Well, the introduction to our source gives us this crucial disclaimer that Edwards placed at the very top of his list.
Before rule number 1.
Yes, before anything else. It reads, "Being sensible that I am unable to do anything without God's help, I do humbly entreat him by his grace to enable me to keep these resolutions so far as they are agreeable to his will for Christ's sake."
Wow. That single sentence is the lens through which we have to read everything else that follows.
It really is. If you take that sentence away, the 70 resolutions become a terrible burden.
But with that sentence in place, they become a roadmap for seeking grace.
Spot on.
Let me throw an analogy out there to just kind of capture what is happening in that disclaimer.
I love a good analogy. Let's hear it.
Trying to live a holy life through sheer human willpower is like trying to push a stalled car up a steep hill all by yourself.
Oh, man. That sounds exhausting.
It is. I mean, you can dig your boots into the asphalt, put your shoulder against the trunk, and shove with all the physical might you possess.
And you might even move the vehicle an inch or two.
Right. Which gives you a totally false sense of progress.
But eventually your muscles give out.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, gravity wins the battle, and the car rolls right back over you, leaving you exhausted and defeated.
That is a great picture of self-reliance.
But relying on grace, on the other hand, is like getting into the driver's seat, turning the ignition, and letting a massive engine do the work.
I love that. The hill is still steep.
Right, the direction is still upward, but the strength pushing the vehicle forward is not originating from your own muscles.
I like that image because it highlights the mechanical difference in where the strength is sourced.
Yeah, internal versus external.
And the text unpacks the subtle danger of that self-effort. Sincere efforts to live faithfully often hide a pull toward trusting our own flesh.
Oh, that is so true.
We see a legitimate need for change in our lives. Maybe we want greater devotion to God, and we resolve to do better.
But the danger is that our resolutions can quickly become monuments to our own discipline.
Yes, instead of instruments of God's grace, we start looking at our own streak of good days instead of looking at Christ.
We start tracking our performance, like with those apps on our phone.
Right, and we start thinking we are earning our standing with God through our sweat.
I want to pause on a theological term that comes up when we talk about this process of growing in holiness. The term is sanctification.
That is a big one.
For the listener who is, driving to work right now or doing the dishes and they hear the word sanctification, how do we break that down? What does that actually mean in the context of relying on the engine instead of pushing the car?
Well, sanctification is the ongoing process where God makes a believer more holy over time.
Okay, so it is a process.
Right. If justification is the one-time event where God declares you righteous through faith in Christ.
So justification is a legal declaration.
Yes, justification is a one-time thing. But sanctification is the daily, lifelong process of actually being conformed to the image of Christ.
Making you practically holy.
Exactly. Yes, making you holy. The error a lot of people make is believing that justification is by grace, but sanctification is by sheer human effort.
Like God saves us and then says, good luck with the rest.
Yeah, they think God saves them, but then leaves them to figure out the rest of the Christian life on their own.
That is a terrible way to live.
It is. Our source text references Philippians 2.13, which says, "It is God who works in you, both to will and to work for his good pleasure."
That is a huge verse.
It establishes that sanctification requires acknowledging our complete inability to produce true righteousness on our own.
So if God does not work the desire and the ability into us, we cannot work out our salvation.
Spot on.
Which is why the source pairs these resolutions with scripture-rooted prayers.
Right. The goal is to take the resolution and immediately turn it into a petition.
The prayers in this document are really designed to ask our gracious Father to work in us what we could never accomplish on our own.
The text actually quotes Zechariah 4.6. "Not by might nor by strength, but by my Spirit."
So the goal is not to boast in our own strong will, but to rest in the finished work of Christ.
This is a massive shift in how we approach spiritual growth. When Edwards says he is sensible, that he is unable to do anything without God's help, he means he feels it.
Like he is deeply aware of it.
Yes, he is not just giving lip service to the idea of grace before relying on his own schedule.
He is saying that his default state is failure.
Right. If left to his own devices, he knows he will squander his time, he will indulge his pride, and he will ruin his life.
Acknowledging that default state of total inability is like the prerequisite for actual growth.
It absolutely is.
I think we need to connect this directly to the person listening right now. Consider your own habits and the goals you have set for your spiritual life.
Think about your daily routines.
Yeah, think about the reading plans, the fasting schedules, or the promises you have made to yourself to be a better spouse or friend.
Ask yourself, are those goals monuments to your own self-effort?
Are you trying to push the heavy car up the hill by yourself, getting angry when your muscles fail? Or are your habits instruments of dependence, driving you to ask the Spirit for strength every single morning?
Acknowledging our complete inability changes the entire posture of our lives.
It really does. And it especially changes how we view the limited time we have on Earth, which leads us directly into a really fascinating aspect of Edward's thought, living in the shadow of eternity.
Oh, this part is so good. Edwards maintained an intense, firm focus on his own mortality.
When you read through the source document, the sheer volume of resolutions dealing with time, urgency, and death is just staggering.
He did not view time as a casual commodity at all. He viewed it as a rapidly depleting resource given by God for a very specific purpose.
The text gives us some really intense examples of this. Let's look at Resolution 5.
Okay, what does it say?
It says, resolved never to lose one moment of time, but improve it the most profitable way I possibly can.
Wow, not one moment.
Yeah, and then Resolution 6 follows with, resolved to live with all my might while I do live.
And then we hit Resolution 9, which is resolved to think much on all occasions of my own dying and of the common circumstances which attend death.
He takes it even further. Look at Resolution 19. It is a commitment never to do anything he would be afraid to do if he expected to hear the last trump within an hour.
The last trump being the biblical signal of the end of the world and final judgment.
Right. And then Resolution 55 involves acting as if he had already seen the happiness of heaven and the torments of hell.
He is actively placing his mind in the atmosphere of the afterlife.
Now, here is where I have to offer some strong pushback on behalf of the listener.
Sure, go ahead.
When I read a guy in his early 20s writing that he resolves to think much on all occasions of my own dying, my immediate reaction is concern.
It sounds a bit morbid.
Very morbid. It sounds like religious scrupulosity or maybe even, clinical depression.
I get that.
Most 20-somethings are thinking about starting a career, finding a spouse, hanging out with friends, and enjoying the prime of their physical strength.
And Edwards is sitting in his study obsessing over his own funeral and the torments of hell.
Exactly. I mean, yeah. How do we distinguish between a healthy spiritual mindset and an unhealthy fixation on death?
Well, that is a highly relevant question, especially since our modern culture goes to great lengths to sanitize death.
We hide it in hospitals and pretend it does not exist.
Right. It is very easy to read Edwards through a modern psychological lens and label him as obsessive.
But the text reframes this perspective entirely.
It does. It is not morbidity. It is what the source calls holy creativity.
Holy creativity. I like that phrase.
This concept is drawn directly from Resolution 2, where he resolves to be continually endeavoring to find out some new invention to promote God's glory.
So viewing life from the perspective of judgment and old age strips away trivial distractions.
Yes. When you look at Resolution 52, he resolved to live just as he thinks he shall wish he had done, supposing he lives to old age.
He is basically time traveling in his mind to his deathbed and asking, what will matter to me then?
Spot on. And then there is Resolution 51, which is arguably the most intense one in the list.
Let's hear it.
He resolves to act in every respect as he thinks he shall wish he had done if he should at last be damned.
Whoa, that is a terrifying thought experiment.
Acting as if he might face the wrath of God.
But the purpose of that thought experiment is to create a rigorous, healthy fear.
Right. It is a fear that functions as a guardrail. It drives a person back to the absolute safety of Christ's imputed righteousness.
Let's pause right there because imputed righteousness is another massive theological concept.
It is the heart of the gospel.
For the listener, what are we talking about when we say righteousness is imputed?
The word impute means to credit to someone's account.
Like an accounting term.
Exactly. I mean, yes, just like accounting. In Reformed theology, based on the Scriptures, we believe that we have no righteousness of our own to offer God.
Our record is stained with sin.
But when we place our faith in Christ, a double transfer happens. Our sin is imputed or credited to Christ on the cross, and he pays the penalty for it.
He takes our debt.
Right. In exchange, his perfect record of obedience, his righteousness, is imputed to us.
So God looks at us and sees the perfect obedience of Christ.
Yes. Edwards lived with the full weight of eternity pressing on his soul so that he would never presume upon that grace.
The fear of damnation in Resolution 51 was a tool to make him flee from his own sin and lay hold of Christ's perfect record with all his might.
That makes a lot of sense. The fear is not meant to paralyze him. It is meant to propel him toward the only safe harbor.
Let's look closely at Resolution 17 because it captures this mindset perfectly. Resolved that I will live so as I shall wish I had done when I come to die.
And the accompanying prayer in our source asks God to teach us to measure each day by eternity.
It asks for the wisdom to walk in a manner that will bring no regret when standing before the Lord.
The prayer says, "Make my daily walk reflect what I know to be true, when my heart is most awake to you."
That connects directly to Resolution 18, where he resolves to live at all times in the way he thinks is best in his most devout frames of mind.
What stands out in these prayers is how they ask God to remove our false security.
Human beings naturally drift toward thinking we have decades left to live.
We act like time is an infinite resource. We say, "I will get serious about my faith next year," or "I will start dealing with my anger when things settle down at work."
Always pushing it off.
But the prayer for Resolution 5 asks God to teach us to number our days, quoting Psalm 90.
The specific request is to be made diligent, not anxious, fruitful, not hurried.
Diligent, not anxious, fruitful, not hurried. That is a brilliant distinction.
When we think about having a short amount of time, the natural human reaction is anxiety and a frantic pace.
Right, we run around trying to do everything at once.
But Edwards was not running around in a frantic panic about dying. He was diligently redeeming the time because he knew his days were numbered by a sovereign God.
He viewed time as a stewardship.
If you know you're managing someone else's money, you keep tight accounting. Edwards viewed every hour as a coin handed to him by God, meant to be invested for eternal returns.
This eternal perspective naturally leads to a fierce, uncompromising stance against anything that corrupts the soul in the present.
If you genuinely believe your time is incredibly short and eternity is infinitely long, you will not tolerate sin in your life.
You will view it as a poison that is destroying your limited time.
Which brings us to the next major area of his life: the root of sin and the rigor of self-examination.
The method Edwards used for dealing with personal failure was absolutely exhaustive.
Let's look at the source regarding his schedule for self-review. Resolution 37 states, "Resolved to inquire every night as I am going to bed wherein I have been negligent, what sin I have committed, and wherein I have denied myself. Also at the end of every week, month, and year."
So he is auditing his soul every single night before he sleeps.
Every night. And then doing larger reviews weekly, monthly, and yearly.
Resolution 41 repeats this, asking at the end of every day, week, month, and year wherein he could possibly have done better.
This requires a level of self-awareness that most of us simply refuse to engage in.
It is a constant, rigorous audit.
But the real mechanism of this audit is detailed in Resolution 24.
Oh, this one is key.
Resolved, whenever I do any conspicuously evil action, to trace it back till I come to the original cause, and then both carefully endeavor to do so no more, and to fight and pray with all my might against the original of it.
Let me bring in an analogy to capture what he is doing here. A lot of people compare dealing with thin to pulling weeds in a garden.
Right. You see a dandelion, you snap off the yellow flower, and you think you have solved the problem.
But the weed grows back because the taproot is still in the soil.
Yeah, the root is hidden. But I want to take it a step further. Edwards is not just a gardener. He is acting like a forensic accountant.
A forensic accountant. Okay, break that down.
Imagine a massive corporation where a forensic accountant finds a 10-cent discrepancy in a huge digital ledger.
Just 10 cents.
Right. A normal person would say, it is just 10 cents, ignore it.
But the accountant knows better.
Yes, the forensic accountant knows that the missing 10 cents is a symptom of a broken formula in the algorithm. And if that broken formula is left unchecked, it will eventually siphon millions of dollars out of the company.
Ah, I see.
Edwards treats his soul like that accountant treats the ledger. He doesn't just look at the bad action, the missing 10 cents. He traces it all the way back to the original cause, the broken formula in his heart.
That is a phenomenal way to understand Resolution 24. He is hunting down the broken formula.
The prayer attached to this resolution asks, "Show me where the evil began in my thoughts, my desires, my neglect of prayer. Teach me to hate not only the fruit, but the root of sin."
And if we connect this to the theological framework he is operating in, it requires a very clear-eyed view of human nature.
Specifically, the doctrine of total depravity.
Yes, total depravity is a heavy term. A lot of people hear that and think it means every human being is as evil as they could possibly be, like a comic book villain.
That is a common misconception.
Total depravity does not mean we are all as bad as we could possibly be. It means that every single part of our nature, our mind, our will, our emotions, our desires, has been touched and corrupted by the fall.
There is no pristine, unaffected part of our heart that we can rely on.
Look at Resolution 8. He resolved to act as if nobody had been as vile as himself. and as if he had committed the same sins or had the same infirmities as others.
He assumes that his own heart is capable of the most vile actions.
The prayer for Resolution 8 says, "Let me not stand in judgment over others, but remember that I am the chief of sinners."
Letting the knowledge of other people's failings promote nothing but shame in himself. He uses the failure of others as a mirror for his own capacity for evil.
Because of this deep distrust of his own flesh, his self-scrutiny extends even to ordinary, mundane things.
He does not just audit major moral failures, he audits everyday routines.
Resolution 40 involves inquiring every night whether he acted in the best way possible with respect to eating and drinking.
Imagine auditing your dinner every single night before going to sleep.
Right. Did I eat too much? Did I eat for comfort instead of fuel? Did I lack gratitude for the food?
It is incredible, and Resolution 60 is even more granular.
What does that one say?
Resolved. Whenever my feelings begin to appear in the least out of order, when I am conscious of the least uneasiness within or the least irregularity without, I will then subject myself to the strictest examination.
The slightest twinge of guilt, the smallest feeling of unrest, prompts an immediate spiritual investigation.
He does not let a bad mood just pass by. He interrogates the bad mood to see what idol is being threatened.
Now, if I am a listener hearing this, I might think, this sounds like a recipe for absolute misery.
Right. Constantly looking at your sins, auditing your meals, tracking every internal uneasiness like a hawk. How does this not result in paralyzing guilt and despair?
That is the natural question. And the source document anticipates it and provides the answer. This strict scrutiny is not meant to produce despair.
The entire goal of this forensic accounting is rapid repentance.
The text for Resolution 68 resolves to confess frankly to himself all infirmity or sin and to confess the whole case to God and implore needed help.
The prayer explicitly states, "Let my self-examination not drive me to despair, but always to the cross."
The prayer continues, "Where I am weak, give strength. Where I am guilty, give pardon. Where I am broken, give healing."
So the goal is not to hide from weakness and shame. The goal is to bring the whole case to God quickly.
If you trace the sin to the root and then bring that root into the light of God's grace, you find freedom.
It keeps short accounts with God.
When you know that God's grace is infinite and his pardon is secure, you do not have to be afraid of looking at your own sin. You can face the ugly reality of your own heart because you know it is covered by the blood of Christ.
So doing the forensic accounting of our sin is only half the process. It is the defensive strategy.
But defense alone does not sustain a person for a lifetime.
What was his offense? What was the actual fuel keeping this spiritual engine running?
That brings us into the concept of holy ambition and the violence of spiritual desire. This section contains some of the most striking language in the entire document.
Edwards was highly motivated by a positive vision. We see this driving force in Resolutions 1, 4, 12, 22, 23, and 44.
Everything is aimed like an arrow at the glory of God.
Resolution 4 resolves never to do any manner of thing, whether in soul or body, but what tends to the glory of God.
But Resolution 22 is where the language becomes exceptionally intense and revealing.
I'm going to read Resolution 22 out loud because the wording is so provocative. Resolved to endeavor to obtain for myself as much happiness in the other world as I possibly can, with all the might, vigor, and vehemence, yea, violence I am capable of, or can bring myself to exert in any way that can be thought of.
Let's look at the specific word violence here.
Yeah.
He resolves to pursue happiness in the other world with violence.
It sounds aggressive, almost unhinged.
It does.
How does this aggressive, violent pursuit of happiness fit with the Christian idea of resting in Christ?
It is a brilliant paradox that we often miss today. Resting in our justification, resting in the fact that we are saved by grace, does not mean resting in our pursuit of sanctification.
This is what the theologians call holy ambition.
True grace does not produce a passive, lazy Christian. The text references Matthew 11:12, where Jesus says the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force.
So the violence Edwards is talking about is an internal war.
Yes, it is a ruthless campaign against anything that would rob him of heavenly joy.
The prayer attached to this resolution asks God to stir up a holy ambition, to not settle for lesser pleasures or live as if this world were home.
The petitioner prays, "Give me a heart that pursues heaven with all my strength."
And we get to see what this spiritual violence looks like in practice when we read Resolution 12.
Resolved. If I take delight in it as a gratification of pride or vanity or on any such account, immediately to throw it by.
The key word there is immediately.
Immediately throwing away anything that feeds the ego requires a violent rejection of earthly compromises.
You cannot hold on to your pride and pursue heavenly happiness at the same time. You have to sever the ties with a blade.
Resolution 44 adds to this, stating that no other end but religion shall have any influence at all on any of my actions.
The motivation must solely be for God's glory.
The desire for heavenly joy in Edwards' mind is so strong, so consuming, that it leaves zero room for half measures.
The prayer for Resolution 23 asks God to expose hidden pride and help him walk with integrity, not only in what he does, but in why he does it.
He resolves to trace even his seemingly good actions back to their original intentions to ensure they are solely for God's glory.
He knows that human beings can do the right things for the wrong reasons.
We can give to charity to be seen by men. We can pray eloquently to impress the congregation.
Edwards wants a vehement, violent pursuit of absolute purity in his motives.
I want to challenge you, the listener, right now with this concept.
Yes, consider this carefully. When was the last time you pursued your spiritual growth with anything remotely resembling vehemence?
When was the last time you exerted violence against your own pride?
Have you ever immediately thrown away a habit, deleted an app, or gotten rid of a possession just because you realized it was quietly feeding your vanity?
We tend to be so comfortable, so casual in how we approach our faith. We treat it like a hobby.
Edwards shows us what it looks like to be violently serious about finding our ultimate happiness in God.
What is fascinating about this internal intensity is that it does not stay hidden away in a prayer closet.
This internal violence against sin bleeds out into everyday life and dictates very specific, highly practical behavior in his daily relationships.
The crucible of relationships is where this theology gets tested. And that moves us into the topic of taming the tongue.
The source document has an entire category of resolutions dealing with speech and the treatment of others. We are looking at resolutions 14, 15, 16, 31, 33, 34, 36, 46, 58, 59, and 70.
It creates a comprehensive ethical framework for interacting with human beings.
Resolution 14 is a strict resolve never to do anything out of revenge.
Resolution 34 dictates absolute truth in narratives, resolving never to speak anything but the pure and simple verity.
The prayer for Resolution 34 asks God to guard lips from exaggeration, from shading the truth, from careless or flattering speech.
Keep me from adding to stories to impress or omitting parts to protect myself.
That hits very close to home. How often do we shade a story just a little bit to make ourselves look like the hero or to make the person who wronged us look a little worse?
It is a constant temptation. We use words to manage our image.
And Resolution 58 resolves to exhibit an air of love, cheerfulness, and benignity in conversation, refraining from fretfulness and anger.
But the resolution that really stands out in this section regarding anger is Resolution 15.
I was hoping we'd get to this one because it is incredibly revealing. Resolution 15. Resolved never to suffer the least motions of anger to irrational beings.
Irrational beings.
Oh!
Like animals or objects.
Yes. I have to confess a personal story here.
Well, let's hear it.
A few weeks ago, I was making breakfast and the toaster jammed. The bread got stuck, it started to burn, the smoke alarm went off, and I lost my mind at the toaster. I yelled at a metal box.
We have all been there.
It is funny in hindsight, but when you look at Edwards resolving not to get mad at a horse or a piece of furniture, you have to ask why.
Why did this specific detail matter so much to a brilliant theologian?
Why make a formal, written resolution about not getting angry at inanimate objects?
It matters deeply because getting angry at a toaster or an animal reveals a heart that is fundamentally restless against God's providence.
Oh, wow.
It goes all the way back to the core theology driving his worldview. If you believe that God is sovereign over all things, down to the very atoms of the universe,
then the jammed toaster, the stubbed toe, the dog that will not stop barking, the printer that runs out of ink at the worst moment, these are all circumstances ordained by God in that specific moment.
So when you are yelling at the toaster, you are actually throwing a tantrum against God's sovereign arrangement of your morning.
That is exactly the theological implication.
The prayer for Resolution 15 asks God to deliver the petitioner from irritation that reveals a restless heart. It asks for the grace to respond with peace to things that cannot reason or respond.
When we lose our temper at inanimate objects, we are displaying a lack of self-control, but more importantly, we are revealing a theology of entitlement.
We believe we deserve a frictionless life. We demand comfort, and when the universe does not bend to our comfort, we rage.
That is a highly convicting way to look at everyday frustrations.
And he applies this strict emotional control to his human relationships as well, where the friction is even higher.
Resolution 46 resolves to not even alter the motion of an eye in fretfulness toward parents, not rolling your eyes, not giving a heavy, dramatic sigh.
The prayer for Resolution 46 asks God to forgive the times we grow impatient or cold, and asks that Christ's gentleness would rule even the smallest gestures.
It is not just about avoiding yelling, it is about controlling the micro-expressions of contempt.
And then we see Resolution 59, which challenges us to act most good-naturedly, precisely when we are most provoked.
Edwards writes, "When I am most conscious of provocations to ill nature and anger, strive most to feel and act good-naturedly."
The natural human response when provoked is to strike back, to defend your reputation, to match the energy of the person attacking you.
If someone raises their voice, you raise yours. If someone is passive-aggressive, you return the favor.
Edwards resolves to break that cycle by doing the exact opposite. He resolves to manifest good nature, even when it puts him at a disadvantage or seems imprudent in an earthly sense.
The prayer asks for the ability to respond with grace, to be most loving when most tempted to be sharp, and to not excuse our own anger just because we feel justified by someone else's bad behavior.
Let me quote the prayer from Resolution 70, because it wraps up this section on speech beautifully.
Please do.
Lord, set a guard over my lips. Let every word I speak carry kindness. Let even correction be wrapped in grace, and truth spoken in love. Let my mouth be a fountain of blessing, not bitterness.
Maintaining this kind of supernatural patience, taming the tongue to this degree when you are being provoked, requires immense spiritual stamina.
You simply cannot do this through sheer willpower. Biting your tongue out of pride will eventually drain you.
This brings us to the question of how Edwards maintained his faith through dark seasons, leading into the topic of spiritual vigor, assurance, and the role of affliction.
Suffering and pain are a guarantee in this life. We're looking at resolutions 10, 25, 26, 28, 57, 61, 64, and 67 to see how he handled the dark seasons of the soul.
Let's start with how he approached affliction. Resolution 67 states, "Resolved, after afflictions, to inquire what I am the better for them, what good I have got by them, and what I might have got by them."
The prayer for Resolution 67 completely changes how we view suffering. It says, "Let me not waste my sorrows. When I suffer, help me ask not only why, but also what for."
It asks God to show the good. He means to work through the affliction, to view trials as tools actively shaping faith.
Think about civil engineering for a second. Think of a massive suspension bridge spanning a wide river.
Okay, I am picturing it.
When engineers build it, they don't just look at the blueprints on a sunny, calm day and declare it safe for the public. They run a stress test.
They drive massive, heavy trucks onto the center span.
They measure the flex of the concrete, the strain on the steel cables, the load-bearing capacity of the pillars.
In the Christian life, affliction is the stress test for your soul.
When pain comes, it reveals the structural integrity of your faith. If you collapse into bitterness, it shows where the hidden cracks were. If you hold firm, it proves the strength of the foundation.
That is an excellent way to understand Edwards' mindset in Resolution 67. He is analyzing the stress test after the trucks have rolled over the bridge.
He wants to know what the test revealed about his own heart and how he can reinforce the structure moving forward.
We also see this defensive posture in Resolution 57 regarding the fear of future stress tests. Resolved, when I fear misfortunes and adversities, to examine whether I have done my duty and resolve to do it, and let it be just as Providence orders it.
The prayer for Resolution 57 asks for the ability to leave outcomes in God's hands. Give me the grace to be concerned only with faithfulness and repentance and to leave outcomes in your hands. Make me diligent in doing good and at peace with whatever you ordain.
Notice how incredibly practical this mechanism is. When anxiety about the future hits him, he does not just sit in his study and panic.
He redirects that nervous energy into a very concrete question. Am I doing my duty right now in this present moment?
If the answer is yes, he leaves the rest to Providence. It is a powerful method for defeating anxiety.
And a huge part of doing his daily duty involves fighting for his assurance of salvation, which we see in Resolutions 25 and 26.
Resolution 25 says, "Resolved to examine carefully and constantly what that one thing in me is, which causes me in the least to doubt of the love of God, and to direct all my forces against it."
And then Resolution 26. Resolved to cast away such things as I find do abate my assurance.
He treats his assurance of God's love as a precious treasure that must be actively defended against thieves.
The prayer for 26 asks God to show the habits that dull affections, the thoughts that turn the gaze inward instead of upward, and the influences that weaken faith. He asks for the courage to cast them away.
He refuses to give way to spiritual laziness, which he calls listlessness in Resolution 61.
Resolved that I will not give way to that listlessness which I find unbends and relaxes my mind from being fully and fixedly set on religion.
The prayer asks God to stir up the heart when it is slow and to resist laziness not by sheer will, but by the joy of knowing God.
If you are listening to this right now and you are in the middle of a really dark season, it is natural to just want to put your head down and survive it.
But Edwards is asking us to do something incredibly difficult. He's asking us to inquire what we are meant to learn from the pain.
Are you treating your affliction as a stress test to reveal the integrity of your faith? Or are you casting away the habits that abate your assurance?
These are weighty, life-altering questions. All these practices we have discussed, the intense time management, the forensic self-examination, the taming of the tongue, the endurance through affliction, they all culminate in a single hypothetical vision of what a true believer should look like in a fallen world.
This is the final major concept we need to look at: the audience of one and the solitary Christian.
This might be the most fascinating part of the entire document. We are looking at resolutions 62 and 63. Let's start by looking at the striking hypothetical scenario Edwards sets up in Resolution 63.
Oh, this one is amazing.
On the supposition that there never was to be but one individual in the world at any one time who is properly a complete Christian in all respects of a right stamp, having Christianity always shining in its true luster and appearing excellent and lovely from whatever part and under whatever character viewed, resolved to act just as I would do if I strove with all my might to be that one who should live in my time.
It is a stunning thought experiment. Imagine you are the only true Christian on the planet. Everyone else is compromised.
I marvel at this resolution because it completely strips away every external crutch we use to justify our own apathy.
It destroys peer pressure. It destroys cultural Christianity.
It completely eliminates the excuse we all use to lower our standards. Well, nobody else at my church is doing it, so why should I be so strict? Or everyone else watches that show or speaks that way or compromises on that issue, so it must be fine.
Edward says, assume no one else is doing it right. Assume you are the only one left.
Let's unpack the theological weight of this hypothetical. He is resolving to live entirely before the face of God.
The historic Latin phrase for this is coram Deo.
For the listener who hasn't encountered that phrase, break down coram Deo. What does it actually mean to live before the face of God?
It means that you recognize God is always the primary audience of your life. We often live our lives like actors on a stage, performing for the audience of our peers, our coworkers, our family, or our social media followers.
We adjust our behavior based on who is in the front row.
Coram Deo means you clear the entire theater. You empty every seat, and you place one chair in the center of the front row, and God sits there.
If you are justified by faith, your obedience is offered to an audience of one.
This is echoed in Resolution 62. Resolved never to do anything but duty, and then do it willingly and cheerfully as unto the Lord, and not to man.
The prayer for Resolution 62 captures the heart behind that. Let me not act from guilt or from pressure, but from glad obedience to you. Whether my tasks are seen or hidden, grand or ordinary, let them be filled with the joy of serving Christ.
If your obedience is to the Lord and not to man, then the behavior of other men is totally irrelevant to your standard of holiness.
It does not matter if every other person in your generation compromises. It does not matter if the culture around you decays or if the visible church grows lukewarm and lazy.
Your duty remains unchanged, to let Christianity shine in its true luster through your own life.
The prayer for Resolution 63 is the perfect summary of this entire mindset. Lord, make me wholly yours. Let me not settle for a common Christianity, but strive to live with such holiness and love that Christ would be unmistakably seen in me. Even if no one else around me walked faithfully, let me walk with you. If only one person in my generation were to reflect your beauty clearly, let me live as if I long to be that one.
A common Christianity. That isn't a phrase that should haunt us in the best way possible.
Are we settling for a common, comfortable, culturally acceptable version of faith that requires no sacrifice?
Or are we striving, relying entirely on the Spirit, to be the one individual in our time who reflects Christ clearly to a watching world?
We have walked through a massive amount of material today. We have looked at Edwards' 70 resolutions, and they are staggering in their strictness.
The demands on his time, the intense forensic audits of his own sin, the vehemence of his spiritual ambition, his total control over his tongue when provoked, and his resolve to live as the only true Christian in the world.
But we have to circle back to the very beginning. The true value of this document lies in its opening premise.
The disclaimer of total inability.
These resolutions are impossible to keep in the flesh. If you try to push this car up the hill with your own muscle, you will be crushed by the weight of it.
They are meant to drive you to your knees in prayer. They are designed to force you to rely on the Spirit to produce the fruit of righteousness.
That is why they are paired with these beautiful petitions for grace.
And that leads to a final thought I want the listener to sit with. Consider the one area of your life where you continually fail to grow. Think about the one sin you cannot seem to kick, the one habit you cannot seem to build, the one area where your January resolutions always fall apart.
What if the main barrier preventing your victory is not a lack of willpower, but the fact that you still trust your own capability too much to truly cry out for grace? What if you are still trying to be independent instead of dependent by design?
That is the question we all need to answer.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the mind and prayers of Jonathan Edwards. Until next time, keep resting in grace and keep looking to the audience of one.